Good afternoon and welcome to the second live Q&A for the Saint Method. We are in week 2 now, coming up towards the end of week 2, and I'm very, very conscious for the people that are running through the Saint Method currently that there is a lot of information this week that has been thrown at you. So well done if you have managed to keep up with everything so far. Just in case you haven't, just a note that if you need to go back through the documents and the tasks that I have set you, you can do that just by going back a few days on your calendar in the coaching part of your app. And if you have missed some of the videos that were popping up every day, don't worry, because they are also in a secret place as well, so you can still get hold of them. They can be found in the on-demand section. And in the on-demand, there's a section for resources. And there is one folder called the Saint Method. And in there, you'll find all of the videos. So if you have missed anything, do not fret. They are still all there. And if you need to go back and reference them at any point, you have access to them there. So hopefully you're not feeling too overwhelmed with everything at this stage. But if you are, please do reach out. And I am more than happy to help. So jumping into some of the questions. I've got a good question that I want to start with. And then it's not so much a question that I'll be responding to, but I want to go into more detail about something that we talked about this week on the Saint Method. So I'm just going to jump straight into the question, which is, some days I just have to choose between a workout and my step goal, although not ideal. But if this is the case, which should I choose? So what I'm inferring from this is that there isn't enough time to get the workout done and ensure that they're hitting the daily step count. What would be better? That is an excellent question. And mentioned in the question, it's not an ideal situation. But there are a few things, especially for the person that asked this question, because I know who it is. I don't know, do we need to be anonymous? I guess it doesn't matter. The person that asked this question, I know, is aiming to do 4 workouts per week and is trying to hit quite a challenging high step goal. So let me first of all address the workouts. Ideally, you want to be doing at least 2 resistance training sessions per week at the minimum. So if you are somebody that is doing 4, and the reason that we set 4 for this client is because they're able to train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. When we're working out, we want to be challenging our muscles, and then we need to let them recover. So I don't want people just working out really hard, all of their muscle groups every single day of the week, because then they're not allowing any time to recover. So in this instance, we've set 4 workouts for the week, 2 upper body and 2 lower body, so that whilst the upper body is being worked, the lower body can rest. And then while the upper body is resting, the lower body can be worked. So we're factoring in the recovery with the number of workouts that we can achieve that week. But 4 workouts is more than you possibly need if you are also trying to factor in your other types of movement. I would never tell you to skip a workout so that you could go and do more steps, because of the 100,000 million health benefits that are associated with doing a workout. So we really, really, really want to be making sure and prioritizing our strength training. So we absolutely do not want to drop any of those. However, if you are doing 4 sessions a week, it might be worth looking at, if time is a real issue, 2 options. Can we change the workout split that you are doing in the week? For example, can we bring in 2 full body sessions with a gap in between so that you are allowing time for recovery? Could we add in 3? You might be able to do 2 to 3 full body sessions. And then on the days when you would have been previously training, you could use that for your cardio. Sometimes less is more. I really surprised one of my clients the other day when I told her that I only go to the gym 3 times a week, which wasn't quite true. I do 3 strength sessions a week, and then I do cardio on the 2 days that I'm not strength training, and I take 2 full days off. So you can get really good results with doing less sessions if you make sure that you are factoring in all of your muscle groups and rest and the right intensity within those workouts. So what we can look at is perhaps doing a change up of how you are currently doing your workouts. If you are enjoying the split that you are doing, something that I often say to people, and something that can really hold people back, is this kind of all or nothing mindset. And when you're a very, very, very busy person, that doesn't serve you, because sometimes if you're very, very, very busy, you just don't have the time to do everything perfectly. So if you are super busy and you're like, I have not got time to do this whole workout, rather than say, I'm just not going to go and do the workout, go in and do something. So for example, instead of doing 3 sets, can you do all of your exercises, but do 2 sets? Instead of doing 6 exercises, why don't you do the first 4 and skip the bottom 2? So you're still in there, you're still doing something, you're still working hard, but you're shortening the length of time that you're doing the workout. We could also bring a little bit of that approach into the issue that you are having here. You could shorten the workout to enable yourself to have some time to get some steps up at the back end or at the front end. However, I wonder if the first option will be best at this time. We reduce the number of workouts, and that frees up some time / days to go and focus on the more cardio specific stuff as well. The other thing I will say just on this with step counts, and we might have covered this a little bit in our Q&A last week, but with our step counts, often people aim for 10,000 steps, and that is a little bit arbitrary. And actually, it came from a marketing campaign for the Tokyo Olympics years and years and years ago. I think they were marketing a pedometer. Do you remember pedometers? Like those little things that you have on your belt, and it measured the steps, like back in the day before we had phones and watches that did it all. So I think it was from a marketing campaign, this 10,000 steps. So it was a bit random, but we've now taken that as this is the benchmark for movement. And I was reading, there was a study that was reported on at the beginning of this year or last year, where they looked at, is 10,000 the magic number? And what they realized is beyond 7,000, there weren't many more significant differences. So the difference between doing 7,000 steps per day versus 10,000 steps wasn't a significant difference. So really, probably the recommendations would be to try and get more like 7,000 steps as opposed to this random figure of 10,000 steps. But what I always tell people on the same method is let's see where you're at when you start and incrementally increase that. And 20% increments seems to be quite a nice, manageable, doable amount to increase. Because really, I guess, and this is my little rant again, we have created a really sedentary world. And sometimes you just kind of have to think a little bit out of the box to see how can I do things a bit differently and increase my daily movement. And really that's what steps is. Like we track steps, but actually it's more about moving daily, just so we're not sat at our desks all day, bang, 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 bang. So thinking of things like, can I get a standing desk if I am a desk worker? Can I get a standing desk? Can I get a small glass of water and have it on my desk? And every time I finish it, I have to get up and go to the kitchen and refill this tiny glass and come back, so that I'm getting up and down a few times per day. Sometimes it's just those little tweaks that make a difference. When you drop the kids off at football, can you do a little lap around the football pitch? It's those things that will add up to, I guess, making you a more active person. So steps are really important, but we have to go for a realistic target first of all while we go through this lifestyle shift, but they are not more important than a workout. So I would definitely always choose the workout. That was a really long-winded way of answering that question, because stuff like this is complicated. Everything is important, but when you are dealing with very limited windows with which you can do things, of course you do need to prioritize some things more than others, which I completely understand. So hopefully some of those ideas there will be helpful. Now, there's only one other thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that was something that we've just done on the Saint method. Everybody that is in the group has been given a calorie target, which is based on their goal. So I'm not going to go into all of the detail around this because there is a lot of detail around the science behind fat loss and how it works. But essentially, for the people not in the group that are listening, if you are trying to lose body fat, we must make sure that we are in an energy deficit. Energy cannot disappear. It has to go somewhere. So when we're consuming energy, which we do via food and drink, if we are not expending that energy via being alive, then we store that energy. It doesn't just disappear into thin air. We store it on our bodies, and that's where we store body fat. So if you are trying to lose some of that body fat, we need to put ourselves into a situation where the amount of energy that we're consuming is less than the amount that we need for our living, so that we have to come into our energy stores to use some of that energy to make up that deficit. So different ways to achieve the energy deficit, which include increasing our activity, increasing the amount of energy that we are expending, but also decreasing what we are taking in via our food and drink. So that's trying to find that balance. But this will be different for everybody because everybody expends different amounts of energy. Some people that I work with are doing 14,000 steps on average per week. Others are doing 4,000 steps on average per week. So one of those people is going to naturally be expending more energy than the other. Person who is 6'5" is going to be expending more energy than somebody who is 5'5", just because they are a bigger person. So it is quite an individualized target for what you need to achieve. So how much you expend per day roughly is what we would term your maintenance. And if you are trying to lose fat, which most people in the group are, then you want to be eating below your maintenance. So I've given everybody range targets. And what that means is, rather than trying to be perfect all the time, if I'm just going to throw out some made up numbers here, but if your maintenance is 2,400, if we wanted to be putting you into an energy deficit, I might say you can aim somewhere between 1,800 calories and 2,100 calories per day. That is going to have you consuming less than what you are using. The 1,800 end is obviously a lot lower than the 2,100 end, but all of that is still creating an energy deficit. The bigger your energy deficit, the more fat you're going to lose. But if it is difficult to be in an energy deficit, you have got a little bit of leeway. It doesn't have to be strictly at the lower end. If you were to consume a bit more food or have a drink or whatever for some reason, and you are at the higher end, you are still in a deficit, but just not as extreme. So I wanted just to make that a little bit clearer, because there seems to be this stuff that goes around and people are always really surprised when I give them their calorie ranges, because there's so much belief from the past where you can only lose fat if you have 500 calories or 800 calories or 1,200 calories, like some of these really low calorie diets from the past. So I think it always surprises people when I say these relatively high numbers, but really the whole point of this is you will be at a deficit, you will lose fat if you can stick to this consistently. It's more about helping you to stick with it consistently. If we go really, really low numbers, it becomes very, very hard, and you might be able to do it for a couple of days, but ultimately then you just become hungry or hangry, and then you want to eat everything. So the whole point of this range is that it's a little bit more realistic, and it helps you to factor it into your lifestyle a bit more. So for example, let's say you are aiming for the lower end of your calorie deficit, and then someone says, would you like to come for a glass of wine after work? You can say, actually, I can come for a glass of wine, because even having the glass of wine, I'm still going to be within my calorie deficit. I'm not going to feel bad about this. I'm going to have a lovely evening. So it just gives you a little bit more freedom in order to stick with your goal, because I don't want this to be miserable, and it shouldn't be miserable. We want this to feel like a lifestyle change and a lifestyle that you can adopt so that you can maintain the fat loss that you will achieve. That's all I've got to cover today. So a short one, but hopefully a helpful one. So if you do have any more questions, please do reach out and I will cover that in a future episode, or just message me if you want me to explain something a little bit more clearer, because I am definitely one that goes off on tangents all the time. So Look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you next week.